After I planted a vegetable garden near our property line, my neighbor claimed I was stealing sunlight. A week later, my soil was contaminated, my water tank was drained, and my tomatoes were flattened overnight. But what his grandson confessed at school turned everything upside down. I've lived in Temecula, California since 2002. My house sits on just under an acre of land, nothing fancy, but it's mine. After my divorce 5 years ago, I threw myself into small projects to keep busy and stay sane. At first, it was just maintenance, fixing the garage door, repainting the exterior, installing motion lights. Then I started thinking bigger. I always wanted a garden. My grandparents had one when I was a kid, and I still remember helping them pull carrots out of the ground, washing dirt off potatoes with a hose, slicing fat red tomatoes for sandwiches. After everything I'd been through, I figured a garden might be good for me, something living to take care of. So last spring, I went all in. I cleared out a corner near the east fence, about 15 feet wide and 30 feet long. Built 4 raised beds from cedar planks I bought at Lowe's. Hauled in fresh compost and topsoil. Set up a drip irrigation system connected to a rain barrel I had installed years ago. I even ran chicken wire around the perimeter to keep the rabbits out. I was proud of it. Every morning I'd go out with my coffee, inspect the leaves, check the moisture, pluck a weed or two. It made me feel like I was building something again after years of feeling stuck. That peace didn't last long. Walt, my neighbor to the east, has lived next door longer than I have. He's one of those guys who always finds something to be mad about. When my ex and I first moved in, he complained about our fence being too high. Later, when I got a dog, he called animal control because the dog barked twice while he was out back. I tried to be respectful. Didn't matter. He was just bitter. A week after I built the garden beds, I was out planting tomatoes when I heard him clear his throat behind the fence. "You gonna move that thing?" he asked. I looked up. He was standing just over the property line, arms crossed, eyes locked on my new garden like it had personally insulted him. "Move what?" I asked, already feeling my chest tighten. "That," he said, pointing. "Your garden's blocking my light." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "The sun rises from behind your house. It's not blocking anything." He didn't laugh. "You're stealing sunlight. I sit out here in the morning. Now I've got shade." I looked at him for a long second. The garden beds were maybe 6 feet from the property line. They were just over 2 feet tall. And his so-called morning chair was behind a big orange tree, 30 feet from the fence. "Walt," I said, trying to stay calm. "This isn't shading anything. It's well within my property." He didn't argue, just said, "You'll see," and walked away. I should have taken that as a warning. That weekend, I noticed my rain barrel was empty. At first, I thought the valve had failed. But I checked the seal, the ground, the spout. No leaks. Someone had opened the cap and drained it. I had filled that barrel after the last rainstorm. It should have had at least 40 gallons. Then the tomatoes started looking sick. The leaves curled, stems wilted, and the soil smelled off, like chemicals. I took a shovel, dug into the roots, and the earth was slick. Not natural. I took a Ziploc bag of the soil to a garden center and asked if they'd test it. They said someone had poured a chemical, possibly herbicide or solvent, into the beds. It was killing everything. I felt like someone had kicked me in the chest. I spent days reworking the soil, flushing it, pulling out the dying plants. I replaced what I could, hoping to salvage the season. But then came the worst of it. I woke up one morning to find my entire tomato row destroyed. Every plant had been stomped down, some ripped from the soil. The ground was wet from overnight rain, and there were boot prints, big ones, leading from the far corner of the fence, right along the line. That's when I called the cops. They sent someone out, took a few photos, wrote a report. But there were no cameras, no witnesses, no proof it was Walt. They told me unless I caught him in the act, there wasn't much they could do. Walt, of course, acted like he didn't know a thing. When I mentioned the damage, he shrugged and said, "Could have been raccoons. Raccoons don't wear size 11 boots and step in straight lines." I felt helpless. That garden wasn't just plants. It was something I needed. After the divorce, after the years of working 10-hour shifts and eating alone, that garden gave me peace. Walt took that away just because he could. But then something unexpected happened. I got a call from Paula, a friend of mine who teaches 4th grade at the elementary school. We've known each other for years. She sounded almost hesitant. "Hey," she said, "do you know Walt's grandson? Kid named Jace." "Yeah," I said. He rides his bike out here when he visits. Why? Well, she said, he told a story during show and tell today. Said his grandpa got mad at the guy next door with the tomatoes and poured special juice on his dirt so nothing would grow. He told the whole class how they snuck out at night, and that grandpa said he was teaching a lesson. I didn't know what to say. He described your barrel, your garden beds, everything, Paula added. Even said his shoes got muddy. The other kids thought it was a joke, but I wanted to let you know. I hung up and just stood in my kitchen, hands shaking. The cops didn't care before, but this was different. After Paula's call, I didn't sleep much. I kept playing that conversation in my head, Jace, 10 years old, casually telling his class how he and his grandfather destroyed my garden. That detail about the special juice and his muddy shoes stuck with me. It was so specific, it made my skin crawl. I took the next day off work and drove straight to the school. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I asked Paula to meet me outside during her break. She agreed, and I brought a small notebook where I'd written down everything I remembered. The rain barrel being drained, the chemical smell, the footprints, the damage. Do you think he made it up? I asked her. She shook her head. Kids lie, sure, but not with that kind of detail. He even said he helped unscrew the water tank. He knew too much. That was enough for me. I went to the sheriff's office with everything I had. Photos of the damage, receipts from the garden center, a printout of my notes, and Paula's written statement. This time, the deputy took me more seriously. When I mentioned the boy's confession, he scribbled faster. They opened a case. Not a big one, just criminal mischief, but it was something. Still, Walt wasn't arrested. Not yet. Word started to spread in the neighborhood. Walt's daughter, who's Jace's mom, came storming over 3 days later. She rang my doorbell nonstop until I opened the door. What did you say to my son? She snapped. I didn't even get a hello. I didn't say a damn thing, I told her. He's the one who talked at school. Maybe you should ask him what he saw. Her face turned red. He's 10. He doesn't understand what he's saying. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. You're right. But maybe he understands more than you think. Especially if he was out there helping. That shut her up. She left in a rage, but not before saying I was trying to ruin their family. As if I was the one sneaking into people's yards and destroying what they built. I thought it might die down after that. But Walt doubled down. He started blasting country music at 6 a.m., pointed motion lights toward my backyard that stayed on all night, and parked his old RV right along the property line just to block more light. He even installed a cheap security camera that just happened to face directly at my garden space. The worst part? Jay stopped coming around. I hadn't seen him on his bike since that day at school. I wondered what they told him. If they blamed me. If he felt like he did something wrong by telling the truth. One night, around 11 p.m., I heard noises out back. Not animal sounds, metal clanking. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The gate to my yard was wide open. I found a plastic bag filled with shredded newspaper and some kind of powder, maybe weed killer or fertilizer, I couldn't tell. It was tucked behind my new planter box like someone was going to spread it, but got interrupted. That was it. I installed 2 cameras, real ones, hidden under my eaves and one inside a fake birdhouse. I angled them toward the garden and the gate. If they came back, I'd have it on video. But I didn't stop there. I started talking to neighbors. Quietly. Turns out Walt's feud with me wasn't the first. He cut a cable line with a shovel years ago during a property dispute. Accused another neighbor of stealing his hose water when their kids played on the grass. One couple even said he'd threatened their teenager for using a drone too close to his yard. The man had a history, and now I had a motive, a confession, and a timeline. I met with a lawyer. Not to sue, at least not yet, but to understand what I could do to protect myself. He suggested filing a restraining order if things escalated further. He also said that if I could link the chemical contamination to Walt directly, especially through a minor's statement, I might have grounds for civil damages. So I waited, and I watched. Because if Walt thought stomping on some tomatoes would be the end of it, he had no idea what was coming next. 2 weeks after the bag incident, I finally caught something on camera. It was just past midnight when my phone pinged. Motion alert. I tapped the app, and there he was, Walt, crouched by the side of my raised bed, holding a jug. He looked right at the fence line, poured something out, and then froze as my floodlight clicked on. He dropped the jug and bolted. By the time I got outside, he was gone. But the jug was still there, half full, no label, reeking of bleach and something stronger. I didn't touch it. I called the sheriff's office right away. This time, they took the footage seriously. The next morning, they came out, reviewed the tape, bagged the jug, and said they'd contact the DA. Walt saw them in my yard, watched from his porch with his arms crossed. He didn't say a word. That evening, his daughter came back. No yelling this time. She looked exhausted, eyes puffy, voice low. Jace told me everything, she said. I didn't know how to respond. He said Grandpa told him it was a secret mission, that you were trying to take their land, ruin their view. Said you were a liar. But Jace didn't want to lie anymore. She looked like she was about to cry. Look, I didn't know it had gone this far. I thought it was just neighbor drama. But now the police are involved, and my son, he's scared. He's 10. I felt some of the anger slip out of me. Just a little. Then do the right thing, I said. Tell the truth. She nodded. We will. The very next day, I got a call from the sheriff. Walt's daughter had brought Jace in to give a formal statement. She admitted her father had boasted about fixing the garden problem and that he and Jace went out more than once. She even found rags in his garage soaked in chemicals. The jug was tested. Herbicide mixed with something industrial, paint thinner maybe. Dangerous stuff. Definitely enough to make charges stick. But then something I didn't expect happened. Instead of filing charges right away, the DA offered Walt a deal. Pay restitution, complete community service, and agree to a no-contact order, or face full criminal charges, including environmental damage and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Walt refused, said he wasn't going to be treated like a criminal in his own neighborhood, so the case moved forward. But that's not the twist. The twist came from the HOA. I hadn't even thought to involve them. Our HOA is small and mostly useless. But when the footage and police reports became public record, someone forwarded the file to the HOA board. Turns out Walt had signed a landscaping compliance agreement 2 years ago after a previous dispute. In that agreement, he swore never to engage in property disputes again without mediation. Violation of that clause meant immediate fines and possible loss of voting rights in the community. Suddenly, Walt wasn't just dealing with me. The HOA hit him with a $2,000 fine and threatened to suspend his property privileges. And then, this part still blows my mind, Jace's school got involved. The principal launched an internal review, since it all came out through a classroom confession. They weren't punishing Jace, but they wanted to provide counseling and check in on his home life. When word spread that a 4th grader had exposed a neighborhood sabotage case, the story took off, small, local media level, but still. A parenting blog picked it up. So did a local crime podcast. One neighbor joked, "Your tomatoes are more famous than the mayor." Walt stopped coming outside. His porch chair stayed empty. But this wasn't the end. I wasn't done. Because if Walt wanted to destroy something that gave me peace, I was going to make sure he learned what it felt like to lose something of his own, only I wasn't going to use bleach or sabotage. I was going to do it legally, publicly, and in a way that would sting for the rest of his bitter little life. I knew Walt was stubborn, but I also knew he cared about 2 things more than anything else: his image in the neighborhood and the property value of his house. He bragged about both. You'd hear him talk about how long he'd lived here, how well he maintained his lot, and how he had more equity than all the young folks combined. So that's where I hit him. I filed a civil lawsuit. Not small claims. Full civil suit for property destruction, environmental damage, and emotional distress. I had the police reports, video evidence, statements from Jace and Paula, the garden center's analysis of the poisoned soil, and HOA documentation of his history. My lawyer was smart. She said, "We're not just suing him. We're showing the community that this wasn't a feud. This was sabotage." And she was right. The case made it all the way to Superior Court in Riverside County. I had neighbors testify. One older couple even cried on the stand talking about how Walt had threatened their grandkids. The judge didn't hold back. Called Walt's actions calculated, damaging, and abusive. He lost. The court ordered him to pay just under $18,000 for soil restoration, replacement of destroyed plants and materials, legal fees, and punitive damages. But the money wasn't the real blow. The real blow was what came next. After the verdict, Walt's daughter, who had been trying to fix things for Jace's sake, moved out of his house. She took her son and left. Told the court she didn't feel safe with her father around children anymore. Walt was alone. Then the HOA dropped the hammer again. With the civil verdict on file and the local podcast making him infamous, they voted to suspend his property privileges for 5 years. No voting rights. No community access. No say in improvements or changes. They also fined him again for reputational harm to the association. He appealed. He lost. The cherry on top? His house value dropped. Fast. Realtors flagged it online. Neighbor conflict and pending litigation history tags killed the interest. Property sat unsold for 8 months before he pulled the listing in shame. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. It took months, but I restored the garden. I bought better soil, stronger fencing, and cameras with real-time alerts. Neighbors helped. Even Jace came by with his mom once to help me plant new tomatoes. I didn't ask him anything about his grandfather. I just let him dig holes and pour water like a normal kid. The new garden grew fast. And every time I picked a ripe tomato or snipped fresh basil, I felt peace, not just because the plants survived, but because Walt didn't. He didn't beat me. He exposed himself. And now, every morning, when I sip my coffee and look toward that empty chair on his porch, I don't feel rage anymore. I feel justice. Real, earned, unforgettable justice.